Alright, so the car body is pretty much prepped. We got the bay windows installed. After I got them installed with the super glue, I just went around the edges with a little bit of plastic cement just to make sure they're nice and secure. I'll probably go over it with just one more layer before I send it to the paint shop. As you can see, we still got to paint the interior, clean this up quite a bit. At this point, I've taken all the windows that we actually need to preserve out. They're gone and taken care of, so that won't be a problem here. We can just reinstall them a little later once we got everything finished up. So this is pretty much ready to receive one last coat of primer to seal everything together. Here's the other side. Looks pretty good. Okay, so with that being done, the underbody we can bring into the shot now. I've pretty much gotten all the detailing done. It's looking pretty good. I got all the various pipes installed, all the various accessories, lines, everything is pretty much cut in. If you're wondering why these lines are cut short like this and look kind of weird, this is for truck clearance. If I take the pair of trucks and install them back onto the model like this, you guys can see how they're basically cleverly disguised, and so you won't actually be able to see these, you know, behind the wheels, but they're cut so that the wheels still have clearance, so that they're not going to interfere with the piping. And that's something you've got to keep in mind when doing any kind of underbody detailing, is if any of these pipes are going to interfere with the axles or anything like that. Obviously when railroads build cars like this, or not just railroads, but companies, foundries, stuff like that, the piping is routed around these wheels, but in model form that's a lot harder to do, so you know, we have to make it work for the model here in this case when kit bashing and stuff like this. So I've cut them to just basically fit around these wheels. Anyway, all the major components are installed. As you can see, we got all the nice underbody detailing and piping finished, and it's all with a phosphor bronze wire, brass wire, steel wire. All the major components are installed. It looks pretty damn good, I gotta say. I got all the accessories installed, like the airlines, the battery boxes installed, these little outlets, the retainer valves installed, and all the piping and component piping that's needed. So it looks pretty good. Anyway, the underbody at this point is pretty much ready for paint. I'm probably going to go ahead and start installing the steps. We'll bring these back in a shot here. Remember that we modified these steps heavily from styrene, and basically got these prepped to be reinstalled. So I'm going to go ahead and install these onto this car body, the platform. As you can see, they're pretty much finished. I got the step guards installed and they're ready to go. So the next step here before we paint the underbody will be to install the steps. We'll just get these primed and ready for paint, and then install them onto the car. Now, setting these aside, we can go ahead and look at the end platforms, which I've now finished. So these are pretty much done. All I've done to these at this point is added the new top plate, which is going to basically cover the top of the section here. So it's meant to basically go right over this top piece. This has to be completely covered. It's a gap on the model, unfortunately, because of the separation from the separate piece. So in order to fill that in, I've just made a new top plate. That way it's completely covered and it'll sit flush with the top piece. So as you can see, we got all the components finished and installed. I got all the new railings installed. I got the coupler lift bar bracket installed. I got the special air hose outlet there. I got the little device here used to basically open the angle cock on the brake line. Now, the other neat little detail that I actually made from scratch here is going to be the air whistle. You can see that little component with the little elbow on it. This is made from that phosphor bronze wire, and it basically leads up to the airline, or from the airline to the top, and it has a little handle there, and that's just a little brake pipe whistle. And I made that with that phosphor bronze. It's got a little elbow pipe from an Athearn part of a fuel tank set. Everything else is just made from fine bits of brass and everything, so it actually looks really good. And then we got the little plate guard there at the top between the brake wheel and the railing. So that's completed. And then this piece, basically the same. There's no A and B end on these. They're pretty much exactly the same. So the only other detail that would need to go on these is coupler lift bars. And then there's going to be two different marker lights that are going to go on these as well. As you can see, if I bring this into the shot here, I've actually made the first marker light, which is made from styrene rod and an MV lens. So this piece here is going to get painted silver, and essentially what will happen, it'll get installed on one of these, And with the chassis system, they used these marker lights on both ends, and essentially they took them and mounted them on the top like this. Many railroads did it like this, as you can see, but this is the standard identification, marker light identification that the chassis system and later CSX used on their Cabooses. Unfortunately, this car only has it on one end. The other end has a strobe light, which I'll have to basically bake from scratch, but the Mars light is pretty much, or the classification light is pretty much done here. I just got to paint this separately, and then of course this will get applied after the model is painted, weathered, and all that stuff. I want it to stay relatively clean. I don't want to, you know, have it on there while we're painting, otherwise it'll just get obstructed by paint. So we'll go ahead and set that piece aside. So these are pretty much ready for primer now. I'm going to go ahead and spray these, and then, like I said, I'll go ahead and install the steps onto the frame of the car, and we'll get it ready for paint. So for the installation of the steps, I basically need to add a new channel to this piece here to act as a backing for the step itself. That way, when it sits on there, it has something to stick to, because as of right now, there's nothing in there, and we need to basically have the step sitting outside of this platform. So what I'm going to do to basically do this is use some styrene channel, or styrene stock rather. I'm going to cut a strip out, and just like before, I'm just going to basically test fit this to see what kind of size we got, and that's pretty much the size we're going to go for, is this right here. So I'm basically going to duplicate this 3 more times. So with these backings cut, I can just take them and basically I'm going to take them and run them through a little puddle of glue. Not enough glue apparently, there we go. Just pick a little bit up, should be enough, and I'm just going to basically, carefully as I can, I'll try to center it. There we go. So you can kind of see what we're doing here. And then I'm basically going to repeat this for all the corners here. It's just the same process. Running through a little glue. Alright, so now I'm going to add a little bit of channel to the top of this step to extend it out a little bit. And this is basically the edge of the step with the little guard that's above the step assembly itself. Just extends out from the walkway. So I'm adding that channeling to both sides before I can install the steps. And just a little bit of glue. I'm just going to try to come over here, center it, and install it. And then after that, all you gotta simply do is take your bead of glue, run along the top, and then center your step right underneath it, like this. And just keep it positioned. This one's kind of crooked, so I just need to adjust it. There we go. And now push it back in place. And here we are. The steps are installed and ready to go. So the underbody is basically complete, with the only exception being that we'll have to add the air hoses later on, but that's not that big a deal. There might be a couple of small things that I'm forgetting right now too that I'll have to add after everything's painted, but for the most part this is pretty much complete. You can kind of see how the steps look on the model now with the extensions. Looks pretty good. All of our work, of course, will be covered up in the corner once we put the shell back on, and then the end rails will cover all the rest of the styrene work. Underneath you can kind of see what we've done as well. Looks pretty good. And they're pretty sturdy too. They got a lot of support. with the addition of those styrene parts. So this entire set is ready to be painted now. I'm going to go ahead and take it to my basement and start spraying some primer, and we'll keep moving. So if we take a look at all the parts we got pretty much set aside now. Everything's painted, everything's looking pretty good, and I'm pretty happy with the results. So this just got the straight black. Now I know what you're thinking, well, the underbody of these cars was blue. A lot of the C&O guys will know this. Obviously the Overland model has that right. It's the basically C&O enhancement blue, enchantment blue I think actually, and this color was applied on the C27 cars. However, the amount of dirt, grime, and everything else that has accumulated on the underbody of this particular car over time, the whole underbody is basically a black grime color. So the reason I painted the whole underbody black is for this reason. It will make it easier to weather it later on, instead of having it blue. All the other component parts that were added separately later on were painted black on the car that I noticed too, so that's another reason why I had them. The only parts that are actually going to be blue are going to be the coupler box, the steps, and the walkways. So what we're going to do with this, and which will actually be the first thing we paint here, is going to be masking off some of these areas that we painted black. I don't want to get any blue for the most part on this interior. If a little bit gets oversprayed on certain parts, I mean, it's fine. I can always go back and touch it up. But just some basic interior painting. I just painted it black. The real interior on the car is a seafoam green color, which is absolutely repulsive. But again, you're not really going to see that once the shell of the car is, you know, back on this. You're not even going to be able to tell. So I'm just going to omit that certain detail. Anyway, everything else on the car body is painted. I did just a little bit more putty work on the base of the model just to make sure everything is absolutely flat and even. So this is ready for painting. The whole car body is going to be yellow with orange and blue trim. So that's another area we're going to have to paint blue, which is on the underbody here. So what I'm going to do, I'll just mask this off, and then I'll just spray some blue onto the underbody of this car, just on the corners. It's only at the base of the car that's blue. Matter of fact, I might even be able to just hand paint that later. You know what? That's actually what I'll probably go ahead and do. I'll probably just omit that. I'll probably just paint the whole car body yellow, and then I'll go back and just hand paint that blue later on, so that's no big deal. Anyway, that's what we got to start with first. So color wise, what I'm going to be using is the C&O Enchantment Blue, and this is by Polyscale. Unfortunately, Polyscale is out of business as far as I know. Their paints are pretty highly sought after just because they're such a good quality paint. They just airbrush so well, and they're acrylic. So I'm going to be using this to do the blue on the car. Fortunately, I have quite a bit of this color left. I bought this years ago to paint a C&O Alco, and I still have some, so this will be plenty for the project. The main car body color for the Caboose is going to be the C&O Yellow. C&O B&O Yellow. This is the standard color, and this is by TrueScale. This is another good quality paint. This is a bit harder to work with. It's harder to get the consistency just right, and it's very hard to clean up, so you got to work quickly with it, but this is going to be the color I use to paint the car body when we get to it. Other than that, I got some paint to do the orange trim later on and stuff like that, so that won't be too much of an issue. And then I have the end rails primed and basically ready to be painted yellow as well, so you guys can see all that. Both of these are pretty much done, so everything's pretty much ready to be painted at this point. The only other thing that we got to look at and do some work to are the trucks, but we will take care of that in a little bit. All I really got to do to these is put an axle generator on them, and I might just brush paint these the C&O Enchantment Blue, and then we'll weather them up separately. So we'll go ahead and get started. The first thing I'm going to do, like I said, we'll start with the underbody, and we'll go ahead and get the blue painted.